What 1969 event overshadowed the Charles Manson mass murder, the birth of the internet era, and the coup in Libya combined? Of course, the landing of American astronauts on the moon. What did the pioneers keep silent about for decades? What secrets were discovered and immediately classified? What kind of bacteria was found on the lunar module's camera, and why has no one flown to the moon since? When you find out about this, you will be very surprised and may forever change your opinion about Earth's satellite, Hubble. Imagine for a second that you spend many years carefully preparing for an event, and then it happens, and your expectations about it turn out to be completely different from reality. That's exactly how the astronauts of the Apollo 11 crew felt by their own admission when they first set foot on the moon. Perhaps it was a small step for a man and a giant leap for mankind, as Neil Armstrong aptly put it. But even that tiny step was very difficult for a person. Why? Yes, because the moon is a completely alien world to us, where everything from low gravity to the lack of familiar Earth landmarks is set against people, even those protected by spacesuits. What did the astronauts discover on the moon during the Apollo 11 mission and the subsequent ones related to landing on the surface of our satellite? What amazing discoveries shocked and even frightened them? Were any signs of microbial life found? And most importantly, when did it all begin and why did it end so suddenly? The epic of lunar exploration began long before humans landed on its surface, back in 1962. However, our satellite was seen with human eyes for the first time by the Apollo 11 crew on July 20th, 1969. The expedition followed the planned scenario. After the launch from Cape Canaveral, the American spacecraft, consisting of a command module, which later remained in orbit with one astronaut on board, as well as service and lunar modules, set off for the moon. It was the lunar module that first descended to the surface of the satellite, carrying Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Let's skip the details, which included quite a few risky emergencies, such as manually adjusting the landing to avoid accidentally crashing into lunar ridges. Let's discuss the main point. In the end, the module successfully landed on one of the largest lunar plains, the Sea of Tranquility. Of course, nowadays, every schoolchild knows that the so-called sea is actually filled not with water, but with megatons of ultra-abrasive sticky lunar dust, regolith. These basalt plains were mistakenly called seas because earlier astronomers believed they were actually bodies of water. The size of the Sea of Tranquility is equivalent to the area of Italy, and it is surrounded by numerous craters and highlands. This impact basin most likely formed about 4 billion years ago due to the collision with a huge asteroid. After that, as a result of volcanic eruptions, the basin was filled with lava. When the boiling substance solidified, the surface turned into a relatively smooth area. I think there's no need to explain why this location was chosen for the first human landing on the moon. If someone still doesn't understand, let me hint that the Sea of Tranquility is full of basalt for research. It has a minimum of obstacles that could interfere with the landing, and it's also close to the equator, which makes navigation from Earth easier. What did the astronauts discover in this gloomy world, reminiscent of Bulgakov's personal hell for Pontius Pilate? First of all, as we mentioned, the mission participants were struck by the contrast between their expectations and reality. The sharp shadows cast by hills and rocks, caused by the lack of atmosphere, the fine, soft regolith with a strong smell of iron, as if fresh blood had been spilled or gunpowder scattered somewhere, and also the bright blue sphere above the black lunar horizon. Our Earth, where the cosmonauts' families and everything they hold dear remain. Neil Armstrong repeatedly described his feelings at numerous press conferences, calling the moon a magnificent desolation. What does it conceal, and what exactly did the cosmonauts bring back with them? The astronauts of the Apollo 11 mission managed to collect about 22 kilograms of basalt and fragmental rocks. As it turned out later, Their age was just over 3 billion years. What conclusions did scientists draw after receiving these treasures for research? First of all, it turned out that the moon was magmatically active for at least millions of years, which contradicts the old ideas about it. Secondly, it turned out that the Earth and its satellite are practically twins in terms of their internal composition, which confirms the validity of the hypothesis about the protoplanet Theia, which once collided with the Earth. Thirdly, the installed seismograph detected a moonquake in real time triggered by a meteorite impact. By the way, the device recorded one oddity. After the tremors, the moon emits a deep ringing sound that lasts for at least an hour. But were there any photographs that proved the reality of this mission? Definitely there were. Starting from the first landing, by the end of the project, there were about 20,000 photographs. The most famous of them went around the world and caused a real sensation. Even in the photos, you can see how strange and desolate our satellite is. The photo of Armstrong's footprint near the lunar module became a true icon. By the way, in April 2021, the Indian Space Research Organization confirmed the reality of the American lunar mission using the Chandrayaan-2 probe. Here's a photo of the Apollo 11 module. Were any tests done for organic matter? Of course, yes, but they showed that the moon is absolutely sterile, although there was still one biological incident. During the Apollo 12 mission, a colony of Streptococcus mitis bacteria was unexpectedly discovered on a camera that returned from the moon. It was later found to be an earthly microorganism that survived in a vacuum. This event was amazing in itself, but it led scientists to only one thought. Humanity, after Earth, began to contaminate another celestial body with its microorganisms. And something will have to be done about it. Which locations did the other Apollo program missions visit? These were much less comfortable places compared to the Sea of Tranquility. The photo was taken a few seconds before the Apollo 12 module landed. Apollo 12 landed in the Ocean of Storms, Apollo 14 in the Highland region, with very ancient rocks of Fra Mauro, and Apollo 15 at the foot of the Apennine Mountains. Yes, there are Apennines on the moon too. Apollo 16 landed in the Descartes Highlands, and Apollo 17 in the Taurus Littrow Valley on the edge of the Sea of Serenity. Which of the missions can boast the most amazing discoveries? The last landing, which took place in December 1972, brought astronauts Eugene Cernan and Harrison Schmitt, a truly remarkable event in every sense. They discovered orange soil, which was initially identified as an artificial formation, but after research, it was determined to be volcanic glass with titanium inclusions. What does this finding show us? It tells us that billions of years ago, there were volcanic eruptions here with incredible gas emissions. What an amazing rock was discovered by the astronauts of the Apollo 15 mission, who landed on our satellite in August 1971. They found the most famous and significant sample of lunar rock, the Genesis rock. The rock is about 18 centimeters long, has an uneven crystalline structure, is light gray, and contains shiny inclusions. The rock weighs about 270 grams. Its astronauts David Scott and James Irwin found it by accident while exploring the Apennine Mountain region. The rock was lying on the edge of Spur Crater, slightly covered with lunar dust. By the way, a few words about it. What about the behavior of regolith surprised the participants of absolutely all the missions? Due to low gravity and vacuum, the moon has no atmosphere. This ubiquitous substance, which causes lunar runny nose in astronauts, settled on the surface of the celestial body in a very strange way. An Earthling, even one unfamiliar with the laws of physics, would immediately suspect something was wrong if dust behaved like that on our planet. The thing is, the regolith would rise with every step the astronaut took, but it didn't create clouds like it does on Earth. Instead, it settled strictly along a parabolic trajectory. All participants of the missions, without exception, described this peculiarity. But let's get back to the Stone of Being. Why was it called that? The astronauts decided to emphasize the artifact's connection to the birth of the moon in this way, since the age of the stone, according to radiometric dating, is about 4.5 billion years. It observed our satellite even as it formed. And this is the oldest sample of lunar rock discovered so far. Supporters of the impact theory of the moon's origin reference the Stone of Genesis. After all, it proves that most likely it was the catastrophe caused by Thea's impact with Earth that created our satellite, which at first resembled an ocean of molten magma. Since the composition of the Stone of Genesis is similar to Earth's mantle, this once again confirms the conclusion about the common origin of the Earth and the moon. Is it worth hoping future missions will finally detect or stop life on our satellite's surface? Considering the lack of atmosphere, harsh cosmic radiation, and temperature fluctuations from -173 degrees at night to +127 degrees during the day, the hopes for this are very slim. The moon is a surreal world, desolate and gloomy, though beautiful in its own way. But sometimes the question arises, are the astronauts hiding some facts from the public? Perhaps the government is forcing them to keep something secret? Over the years, there have been various rumors, sparked by slips of the tongue or vague statements in the astronauts' own interviews. For example, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, who stayed in the orbital module during the mission, mentioned several times about strange flashes they experienced on their way to the moon and back. These visual effects would occur even if they closed their eyes. Scientists later discovered the phenomenon wasn't mystical. This is how high-energy cosmic rays piercing through the expanse of space manifest themselves. Nothing can stop them, not the glass of a porthole, nor the retina of the eye. But astronauts have sometimes mentioned something even more amazing. Strange music was found in radio signals. First of all, how can there be sound in a vacuum? Secondly, the music had a strange effect on the cosmonauts who were unfortunate enough to hear it. A chilling horror. The sound was like eerie howling or an otherworldly whistle. Subtitles. Even stranger, this noise was heard exclusively on the dark side of the moon. How strong were the nerves of Michael Collins, a member of the Apollo 11 mission who remained in lunar orbit throughout the entire mission. He repeatedly admitted that when the moon blocked the Earth and he lost contact with the crew, an incredible, incomparable feeling of loneliness would completely overwhelm him. All of this was accompanied by the mentioned eerie sounds. And the last question related to our satellite that I'd like to clarify right now is, why hasn't anyone flown to the moon for more than half a century? During this time, not a single manned mission has been organized. Why did absolute stagnation follow after such activity? Doesn't this suggest that the astronauts saw something that scared them and completely discouraged the authorities from organizing any further projects? There have been a lot of speculations published and voiced in the media in this regard. There were also rumors about classified documents that were never made public, and about attempts to restrict the astronauts in their revelations. But there is no real evidence that any of the mission participants saw alien ships, bases, or any other traces of an extraterrestrial civilization. What does it say? Official government sources talk about the closure of the lunar program. Their first reason is the project's high cost, The Apollo program cost $25 billion, now equal to $150 billion. The second reason is the gradual decline of the Cold War between the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics and the United States of America. Along with it, the space race faded into oblivion. In addition, there was a clear shift of focus to near-Earth programs, orbital missions, and the development of the International Space Station. However, there's no need to despair. A manned flight to the moon is still planned for 2026-2027. Although it's unclear if it will happen, given the current geopolitical mess. Share your thoughts in the comments. Considering the new environmental and aesthetic standards as well as safety requirements, what do you think modern missions to our satellite will look like? And what might they discover?